So the last match of the International Rugby weekend is just about here. The Springboks travelling to Scotland for their first November International, but Scotland, they have already got a game under their belt, beating the Fijians by 40 last week, so coming into this game with great form, which means it's going to be an awesome match when these two sides go head-to-head. But in this preview, we'll be looking through at the lineups, the key head-to-head battles for these two sides, and then also at the end, a prediction for who I think will win this game. But jumping straight into the lineups, the Springboks initially going to announce their side on Tuesday. That then got pushed back to Thursday, and then once again pushed back to Friday. But in the end, we got to see the lineup, and the 7-1 split off the bench is what Rassie Erasmus decided would be best for this game. But in the starting lineup, it is number 1, Oxnechet, number 2, Bongio Manambi, and number 3, Thomas du Toit. With the injury of Frans Malherbe, there was always going to be that switch at 3. Thomas du Toit, the man who gets the nod. They also had an injury concern in the locking duo, and that is a sentence that we've said many times for the Springboks throughout 2024, whether it was that injury of Franco Mostert, Arge Snyman, Salman Moura more recently, and the most recent Ruan Nokia. It's meant that there will be a change in that locking duo, but it's not exactly a bad one. Eben Etzebeth as the number 4, he is the skipper as well for this contest, but number 5, Franco Mostert, returning from his injury. Like I said earlier on in the week, I would have loved to see whether or not Nokia, had he been 100% match fit, would have kept that starting spot here up against Scotland, or whether they would have gone with Franco Mostert to get him some minutes before the next two matches. In the loose forward trio, I feel like these 3 spots were the most surprising in terms of selection. Number 6, Marco van Staden, getting picked ahead of Sia Khaleesi. Number 7, Elric Lowe, picked ahead of Pieter-Steph du Toit. And then number 8, this one was understandable. I did get a little bit of stick for going with this man in my Springboks lineup, but Quagga Smith, it's his 50th test. Rassie loves to give those players the milestone game in the starting side, so it seemed like a safe bet to have him somewhere. In the starting 15 in the backline, it is Jaden Hendrickse alongside Andre Pollard as the 9-10 combination. In the midfield, Andre Esterhuizen and Lucanio Arms, so more than likely we will see Damien Dialendi and Jesse Creel as the two going head-to-head with England, who in their most recent game once again just came up that little bit short up against the Australians. In the back 3, Makazole Mapimpi, at number 11, number 14, Kanan Moody, and then number 15, Willie LaRue. This will be test match number 98 for him, so a couple more caps for him, and he will bring up the 100. But like I mentioned, the 7-1 split off the bench. Grant Williams, the only back replacement, but of course there's quite a bit of versatility from the Springboks side. We could see someone like a Quagga Smith slot into that back line if needed, which I think is even more credit to that man in terms of what he brings to the Springboks side anytime he makes his way off the bench as a super sub, but also what he can do when he starts a game for the Boks as well. But looking through at this Scottish side, in terms of their starting lineup, number 1, Pierre Schoeman, number 2, Ewan Ashman, and number 3, it is Xander Fagerson. So not too different from what we saw in the match up against the Fijians. Scotland, they had a really good start in that game. Did go a little bit quiet when Fiji started to find their feet, and then really poured it on in the last 15 to 20 minutes. And we've got to remember, in this game, that is when more than likely Rassie Erasmus will unleash his bomb squad. So no matter what the score is after 60 minutes, I don't believe it will be anywhere near what the score will be at the end of this game, as both of these sides strong in that final quarter. In terms of the locking duo, it is Grant Gilchrist alongside Scott Cummins. In the loose forward trio, Matt Fagerson at number 6, Rory Darge at number 7, and then Jack Dempsey slots in as number 8. There will be a lot of physicality between these two loose forward units. I have to say though, if we're looking at the locks, definitely give the advantage to South Africa in that department, although we don't know how 100% Franco Mostert is. You'd assume that he's back rearing to go, but sometimes there can be a little bit of rust there. So that could be something Scotland do try to target. In their backline, it will be Ben White as the starting number 9, with number 10 being Finn Russell. Now, he was not playing in that last match up against the Fijians. He is a phenomenal player, but he's also a target for a lot of opposition. They try and shut him down, and that's where we see Scotland get a little bit strategic with their selection. They have gone with more than one fly half in this back line, and I feel like that will help maybe if Finn Russell is getting shut down, they can then rely on Tom Jordan to try and find those gaps as well. But Duan van der Merwe, he will be out on the left wing for this contest, him versus what we were hoping would be Cheslin Colby, but instead it will be Duan van der Merwe taking on Kanan Moody. In the midfield, Sione Tuipulotu, who is the captain for the Scottish here, with Hugh Jones on the outside at 13. Number 14, Blair Kinghorn. I would say the biggest hit that Scotland has taken for this whole side is Darcy Graham not being available. Unfortunately, did pick up the injury in the second half after scoring 4 tries up against Fiji. So those type of points could be extremely valuable in a game like this, definitely because the last time that Scotland played the Springboks, they did not score a single try. So having a clinical try scorer not on the field for Scotland will be quite the hit. Number 15, this is where they've gone with Tom Jordan to close out the Scottish starting side. Now, I should also mention that Scotland themselves have gone with the 6-2 split off the bench, but the trend has kind of continued in terms of any time we've seen a side go 6-2 against Rassi, he does enjoy the mind games of one-upping them, and he knows how important the bench could be in the later stages of this game. Scotland, they will get fatigued in this contest. They make a lot of tackles throughout their games, but their defensive numbers in terms of tackles made compared to tackles missed, it's probably the best in terms of international sides. So I'm wondering if the Springboks can ruin that percentage a little bit, or whether Scotland can once again keep it at its high point. But looking through now at their head-to-head, Sione Tuipulotu versus Andre Esterhuizen is the first one that I see, because Tuipulotu is known as a battering ram in that inside centre jersey, but Andre Esterhuizen, he's a player who picked up a suspension a little while ago, a couple matches, and that took him out of Rassi's side for a little bit of time. So rather than losing his form, he went in for the Sharks in the URC and just bulldozed over anyone that stood in his way, got himself a double in one of the matches, and really earned his way back into the Springbok side. So those two going head-to-head, hopefully not head-on-head, because or else then it's probably going to be a card. We've already seen some interesting calls throughout the weekend. We don't need any more. Hopefully these two are both going to be on their A game, and we get to see 80 minutes of them just smashing into each other. I could have worded that in many other ways, but I'm just going to go with it. So that's one of the head-to-heads that I am looking forward to seeing. In terms of the forward packs, there are a couple important ones. I think Quagga Smith and Jack Dempsey, two players to really look at for these two sides. Dempsey, a workhorse when he plays for the Glasgow Warriors. Quagga Smith, that man is literally the best super sub in World Rugby, but he is starting in this game. We have seen him play a little bit of 8 earlier on in the year, and that was with the absence of Jasper Wiese. Elric Lowe, he got the opportunities in Australia. Jasper Wiese taken over after that, but some people forget that Quagga, he's versatile, and I don't know how they forget that, because he's literally just everywhere when he's out there on the field when he needs to be. He has a sevens background, so he can play many positions, but he could be an absolute game changer, definitely with those turnovers in the breakdown. They could be crucial. Jack Dempsey, he can get them as well. So I do want to see who gets more turnovers out of those two. Number 8, and then moving on to my last head-to-head to watch out for, it has to be the battle of the fly halves, the experienced heads of Finn Russell and Andre Pollard. Two very different players stylistically. Andre Pollard, he's known as being a little bit more conservative, I guess you could say. He kicks his threes, he goes for those up and unders, and kind of feeds the rest of the backline. Doesn't often run it himself. Whereas Finn Russell, I don't actually think Finn Russell knows what he's going to do at the time that he does it. It could be a cross kick, it could be a cutout pass, all of those type of plays though, if the Springboks are turned on, not in that way, if the Springboks are switched on, would be the better way of wording it, they could get a turnover, an interception try. Those type of things, it's a bit of a risk and reward for this Scottish backline. How much are they willing to gamble to get those tries? Or will Finn Russell be a little bit more safe throughout this game? Quite possibly, but I don't think that works in Scotland's favour. They have to try things here, because if they do try and play just an up the middle, run it with the forwards, get it 1 or 2 passes through the back line, I do think that that heavily benefits the Springboks, because that is not so much Scotland's natural game. We saw it up against the Fijians. When they won a penalty, when they had the chance, they would kick for the corner. And I want to see them use that same mindset here up against the Springboks, because up against South Africa, if they can get a few early tries, that might be just enough pressure that they need to get the South African side a little bit uncomfortable, something that not too many sides do. But now we are up to the stage, ladies and gents, of a prediction. Now, in terms of the betting odds, Scotland do come in as underdogs for this matchup, and they are expected to lose this game by 11 points, according to the odds makers. But I still have a couple questions regarding this game. Number one is, when will we see the bomb squad unleashed? Is it going to be all at once? I mean, we've seen it in the past when pretty much the whole bench make their way on at once, with Arge Snyman, with Jasper Wiese, couple big men there. Malcolm Marx, a game changer later on in a contest as well. And then that's not even mentioning Sia Khaleesi, the captain normally, but of course Eben Etzebeth has it for this game, and Peter Steph de Toy. It doesn't get much better than that when it comes to having a bench that can completely change a game. And that is why Scotland need a great start in this contest. I think Scotland will score a majority of their points in the first 60 minutes, and I could even argue that they might score a majority of their points in the first 40. But it's whether or not they can counter what the Springboks are throwing at them, and whether they can score in the natural way that they do. I do actually think this one could be quite high scoring, weather permitting, of course. We saw between New Zealand and Ireland that the rain really dampened that game in terms of not just the pitch, but also the momentum of both sides. So if it's dry at Murrayfield, I think it's going to be an awesome one, and I am going to go the Springboks by 8. It could be considered a little bit low, depending on how the South Africans play. Of course, we've got to remember they could have a little bit of rust. We haven't seen them in action for a little while. Yes, we've seen them in the URC, but sometimes that doesn't quite translate to international rugby. So I'm going to say the Springboks by 8. But honestly, if Scotland pulled off the upset, it would be from really attacking throughout this game. But I'm going to go the Springboks to win it, and I'll say they win it 29 points to 21. We'll see whether or not we're correct. Pretty high scoring. Now that I think about it, I might have gone a little bit too high there. Hopefully we get to see a great game when these two sides go head-to-head. But do let me know, of course, your score predictions in the comments down below, as well as which players you feel will be the keys for their sides. We are going to be doing the live commentary on the channel. It is kicking off at 5:10 a.m. New Zealand time, 6:10 p.m. in South Africa, but we will have a big build-up for the matchup, looking through at the lineups and the stats regarding this game. But I'm looking forward to it. Murrayfield will be electric. It's going to be a great way to close out the international rugby weekend. And the best news is we still get to see these two sides in action throughout the rest of November. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all for the next one.